Welcome to the Hunting News Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Ziegler, and I am here with my co-host, Aaron Futrell. We are going to do an interesting podcast today because it's something that we know quite a bit about. It's animal mating, how to breed animals, stuff like that. You're going to talk about a very interesting story where essentially, I'll give a little small recap. It's a sheep guy who's trying to make a new sheep. It's got real crazy. It's got the ODNR, well, not the ODNR, the DNR. All the game wardens kind of a little confused, as are we. It's also
science fiction, kind of.
It's
science fiction, but real. So science nonfiction.
Yeah, it's hunting science fiction, but
science nonfiction.
And then I'm going to go into a story about fish bukkakis. It's a real thing. So we're going to talk about mating.
Yeah, this is your expertise.
I'm an expertise in this. I'm an expert in this.
Don't look at his Google history, folks.
Trust me. When I had to Google this and do a little bit more deep dive into this.
Did you go in incognito mode?
I did not, and it was a problem.
What was coming up on your search history and all your ads on Facebook after that?
It was AliExpress, which is a Chinese marketing, a Chinese Amazon. And on this Chinese Amazon, they were sending me all these pictures of sex toys and stuff like that. It was
that was before or after?
Both. It was no after. It was wild. I had to keep exiting out of these ads. It was Google. It was Amazon. It was everything.
Yeah,
all this bizarre. I mean,
so what did we learn?
I learned. I can't talk about it on the podcast what I learned, but there are some very interesting things out there.
Yeah, you should probably go to incognito mode or something, VPN, before you Google that stuff.
Dude, I really got to do that because...
Or maybe you won't.
Well, because, and as most of you people will hopefully know soon, we own DeLong Lures, so we do a lot of search engine optimization stuff, so I'm always on Google. I'm always, writing articles. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I'm doing a lot of research, and there's ads that pop up at the top, and there's all these ads of females with ropes tying them to different it was very well. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I kept clicking out of it, and my wife saw it, and she's like, what is that? I'm like, she's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, this is an ad. She's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, no, you definitely know. Like, no, I do know, but so let me explain later.
It's good. Yeah.
My wife just shakes her head. She's seen so many crazy things from me that she's like, oh.
Yeah. All right. Well, you'll find out about this, but let's get into...
So anyways, we are the Hunting News Podcast. We are the owners of DeLong Lures, so right now that is our only sponsor, just because we don't have sponsors right now because we've chosen not to go with a couple of sponsors that have reached out. We are interested in doing some sponsorships of people who we're talking to right now, but realistically, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. Follow us on those platforms. The Hunting News on Facebook. We will be posting our clips, and every week we will be asking you, hey, who is the ass of the week? And then this dear butt will go over top of that person. So by all means, go on there. If you comment on Facebook on the Hunting News, we will respond to all of your comments when it comes to the podcast stuff. We post things. We reach 50 to 100 million people a month. So it's kind of hard for us to reach it. Yeah, well, between all of our pages during deer season, it's 100 million.
Yeah, it is.
During this time of year, it's more like 50. So reach out, comment, send us private messages. We'll respond to them. You have direct access to everything. We're on these daily while we're sitting down here making fishing lures, because we're here all day and sometimes all night making fishing lures because we're very busy. Just ask us our questions. So, Aaron, with that, go into this very bizarre and weird story in the hunting industry about making a new type of sheep.
All right, so what I got pulled up here on the U.S. Department of Justice's website. So straight from the government, if you could trust them. I worked for them for 20 years, so you can't. All right. Montana man pleads guilty to federal wildlife trafficking charges as part of a year-long effort to create a giant hybrid sheep for captive hunting. That's the title of their press release.
So where's this press release at?
This is on the Department of Justice website, and it's out of Montana.
Okay.
So you can find this in the Department of Justice. Plus, you can find a whole bunch of other news articles on it. If you just Google cloning wild sheep for hunting, it'll pop right up. So if you want to find other articles on it.
Now, quick question before you go in this. A wild sheep hunt is extraordinarily not just expensive, but very, very hard to get. You have to draw most of them, and they cost, I mean...
Yeah, if you're gonna get a tag for like a bighorn, you have good luck. If you're not paying an outfitter, and if you're just trying to do a DIY, you're probably going to be once in a lifetime waiting forever to get, because draw odds are ridiculous. And for like Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, any of the places in the U.S. to get drawn.
So for people who don't understand draw hunts, explain that real quick. Just summarize it. Most people understand it.
Yeah. Basically, you purchase pretty much a lottery, and you can get points, and the more points you get put in, the better chances of you getting drawn in the lottery. But everybody keeps putting in the lottery, so the more points you need to get drawn, and it's different for every single state, and it's pretty much all the western states and Alaska. And okay. I'm not familiar with the Canadian rules, but you can also get drawn in Canada.
So basically, you have to put your name in the hat. They stir up the hat, and the more times you've put in, and you have to pay money for each year.
Yeah.
And every year you put in, you kind of get more tickets in the hat, and they draw a small amount of people out of the hat. And there's so many people that a lot of people go their entire lives without getting drawn.
Correct.
And so basically, drawing a wild sheep hunt is incredibly hard. And then once you get it, you're not guaranteed success.
No.
And it's going to cost you a ton of money to get these a guide to make sure that you have a better chance of getting. It's extraordinarily expensive and not guaranteed. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's usually for most people it's a once in a lifetime. No, I think your best chance is Alaska, getting a Dall sheep hunt. Those are, I think, where the most tags are. If you get a bighorn, is extremely difficult, or a stone sheep hunt is even more difficult.
Oh, I would love it so much. I hear people talking about it so
and
much.
If you got and getting a guide, I think it's like, I think stone sheep, you're talking about $100,000 sheep in some places.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, I know you can get stone sheep in like Mexico. I think Mexico all the way up into Canada.
Yeah.
And so it's I'm not an expert on like all the draws and everything, and it's expensive though, and it's like very difficult. But this guy, he sells his sheep to game preserves and hunting preserves.
So like high fence hunting.
It's high fence hunting. So this is what he does. He basically breeds sheep and supplies game preserves and hunting preserves with sheep. And what his deal was, he was trying to create a new breed of sheep for these with giant horns. So what he decided to do was to get a Marco Polo sheep from Kyrgyzstan.
Okay, so a Marco Polo sheep is essentially a sheep. Like if anybody's seen a bighorn sheep or something, it has like a full curl, means it goes 360 degrees around. Now, if I'm not mistaken, a Marco Polo sheep almost does like 2 curls.
Yeah, it's the largest sheep in the world horn-wise. And
Okay.
they weigh up to 300 pounds, and they're the largest sheep in the world.
300?
Yeah, 300-pound sheep, and they're freaking huge.
Dude, think about a 300...
Huge.
Huge.
Huge sheep. Beautiful sheep. Wonderful.
So he breeded, what was he breeding the Marco Polo sheep with?
I believe a bighorn.
Okay.
That's what the article alludes to. It doesn't say exactly, but the guy, I got to read you what they called his ranch, because this I thought was kind of funny. That this Montana guy, he has a 215-acre alternative livestock ranch.
Alternative. Wait, that sounds like a swinger animal ranch.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
called,
guys.
I know.
Hold on.
That's what it's. That's the official. I guess that's the official way that they list it.
It's the lifestyle, right?
It's the alternative livestock ranch.
Wait.
That's how it's. That's how it's probably the legal term for having a like wild sheep. So he has like bighorn sheep, mountain goats, and other type of those type of livestock. But it's not like cows or sheep or the regular type. It's alternative.
So it's interracial sheep mating. Okay, this is crazier than I thought. You started alluding to this. I'm like, hey, leave it for the podcast. So you have interracial sheep breeding. in a very swinger-esque way.
Yeah, it's a swingers ranch.
Okay, for sheep.
Swingers ranch for sheep and goats.
And 300-pound sheep seems and goats.
Well, he has goats, but
Okay.
but they weren't involved.
Okay.
That we know of.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember too, when you're breeding different species, like if that's a 300-pound sheep, a lot of times you get what's called hybrid bigger, where the product will be bigger than either of the species that were involved.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I never knew that. So you can get like a 500-pound interracial sheep with giant antlers? Dude, I'm in. How much is the hunt?
Okay.
Go on.
Well, let's back up a few minutes.
Yeah.
So basically what he did is they didn't elaborate what parts, but he smuggled parts of Marco Polo sheep out of Kyrgyzstan. So you can imagine what parts they were.
So do you have anything in your bag that you need to declare?
Just a bag. There's a bag in my bag
Wow. From Kyrgyzstan?
from Kyrgyzstan.
How do you get that through customs? Like,
Do you have anything to declare?
oh, you know what? When I remember.
Yeah. So what do you do? So how do you? I'm just imagining if he did declare it. Got my balls.
Yeah, I just got some balls. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but have you seen sheep balls? Those things are freaking
no.
huge.
I have not.
Yeah, you have. You know,
Like I said earlier, I've looked up
No,
fish bukkakis, not sheep balls. Go on.
You know, I had a dairy goat farm, so the dairy goat
yeah.
barn was next to the sheep barn.
Okay, before we move on, just to be clear, our former business partner, who I was the best man at his wedding, Brandon, your younger brother, on your dairy farm, he told me this story. I got to hear. It sounds like it's true. He told me that when there was a mating goat, a rutting goat, a rutting buck, a male goat's called a buck, that you guys separated the buck, and I still remember it at your house. At your house in the barn, there was like a separate stall there, and there was like crazy. It smelled incredible. It was just
Not incredible.
It was incredibly bad.
Incredibly bad. They're terrible.
Depending on what you're into, he got. And is it true that you took your younger brother and threw him into a stall with a rutting buck and let that buck molest your younger brother when you were in high school?
Kinda. He wasn't in the stall the buck wasn't in the stall at the time. He was outside of the stall, I believe, tied to a tire that he could drag around, and I just happened to push my brother into the range of this buck where he got attacked.
According to your brother, that's not true. He told me that he actually was.
He was molested. I'll say that.
He told me that there was actual specimen that was squirted. Can I say squirted?
Yeah, it was
All over him. Like this is my understanding.
I'm gonna plead the fifth.
That's wild. To all my brothers and sisters out there, I was not that bad, right? Like, that is the craziest brother story I've ever heard.
Okay, well, let's get back on track
Yeah.
here. So anyways, the guy smuggled sheep parts out of Kyrgyzstan, and then he then sent them to a lab, I'm assuming in Montana, and then got them cloned, and cloned some fetuses from the parts of the sheep.
Now, does it? I guess my question would be: is it like
Or-
parts? Like he grabbed like a bag of? I'm not sure we can say on YouTube, but I mean like a ball bag. Or did he just like grab? Did he just like man? Can you say like jerk off a sheep? Is that something we're allowed to say in here?
I don't know. It just says parts. That's
Okay.
all. That's all it says on
Okay.
the Department of Justice website.
Well, I'll make some calls. I'll see what I can figure out.
Yeah, I saw in some other articles where they were alluding to male parts.
This is
but,
wild.
Yeah, they alluded to male parts, but I don't know if there's any been confirmation that those were the parts they.
Would it be called goat straws? I think they're called.
No, it seemed like they were like genetic material.
Like he cut it off.
Well, they took there's some because they took the DNA and made embryos at this lab.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
and then
gotcha.
if you're familiar with Dolly the sheep, the first sheep that was cloned, and then they took those embryos and implanted them in one of his ewes from the alternative lifestyle ranch. and then one of them was viable, and they produced a fully functional male Marco Polo sheep.
What?
So now he has a fully alive Marco Polo sheep on his ranch that he called the Montana Mountain King.
There's so many jokes to make
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and this is where it starts. This is where it starts to get kind of wild. No,
Yeah.
it's already gotten wild. But anyways, so then after this, he is to get he's starting to like forge veterinary records saying that this Montana Mountain King is a new species because it is illegal to have Marco Polo sheep in Montana because they're endangered. And you're only allowed to hunt them is for conservation efforts. So that's the only reason you're allowed to hunt them in China, Kyrgyzstan, and I think in the few other of the stands over there.
Yeah.
So they're illegal to. It's illegal to have possessed parts. It's illegal to have an alive sheep because they don't want them because they can breed with bighorn sheep, and they don't. And Montana does not want them sullying the wild population. So that's why they're illegal to have. That's according to the Montana.
The mixed race sheep are the problem. Okay, go on.
Yeah. So that's what Montana say. They don't want them to corrupt the genetics.
I mean, makes sense.
Okay.
That
So
makes
it's
perfect sense.
So he can't say that he has a Marco Polo sheep. So he says he has a new breed.
he invented a new animal. Okay,
Yeah, I know it's the same thing they do with like a Chiweenie or a Labradoodle or whatever. But anyway,
shit doodle or
Yeah.
doodle shit.
Whatever they
That's
are.
a thing, right?
Probably a Shih Tzu and a Labradoodle.
And a
I don't know, poodle?
Poodle, yeah. I thought that was a shit doodle.
Probably.
Maybe I made that up.
Probably
on.
not. But anyways, so he forged vet records to say he invented this new sheep, and now he's breeding this with his bighorn sheep use to create this hybrids, and then taking those hybrids, collecting semen from those hybrids, and selling the semen to other game farms, and well as selling the babies to game farms.
Wow. Do you know how much? Is there any information on this article about how much he was charging for just like one good old fashioned cranking out of the sheep?
I didn't see what the cranking out, but because
those straws are worth a lot of money. Like with deer,
I never saw how much he was selling a straw for, but I did see he was selling the babies for like $10,000 a piece.
Okay, so less than that, but still, dude, a baby for $10,000, like that's and you're just breeding it. Now,
and then and that's I'm sure he can get subsequent generations of
subsequent, yeah,
the tongue
twatter.
Yeah, but
this
anyway,
is the craziest story. We've been doing this with the hunting news. We've been reporting on this for a decade now.
So
this is one of the craziest stories.
Yeah, this is over the course of like a decade that this guy had this plan because this isn't a short process. You gotta smuggle in the parts. You gotta clone them. You gotta wait till this guy grows up to breeding age, start breeding, and then you gotta start.
Okay.
Then you start, putting his kids out to the different game farms.
Think
It's
about
like
this though. How many crazy stories? Not quite like this, but how many people? I know there's a lot of people listening to this that are going to be thinking about this when I mention it. How many of you have had, or not you specifically, but have a relative or that one crazy cousin that, like we have Brandon, you all have that one crazy cousin that brings up these like wild ideas, but it never comes through.
Hey, y'all.
It sounds like the craziest cousin in the family had this like wild idea, and somehow he went all the way to Kyrgyzstan, whatever it is, and just chopped off.
This is the ultimate. This is the ultimate hold by beer moment. Hey, y'all, watch this.
And he actually pulled it off. So are these now? I don't know if you know this or not, but is there are they breedable at all, or is he just selling the babies? And is there any information on that yet?
It doesn't say, and I don't know. I didn't see that in any of the other articles I read on this. Whether
asking for a friend,
yeah, because I know a lot of hybrids aren't viable. But since
what is it? A horse and a donkey making
like a mule,
and a mule is it?
And mules are sterile.
Yeah,
but since they're sheep, they might be viable.
We'll have to look into that and get back to people on this.
Yeah, because I didn't
bizarre story.
Because I didn't even think of looking into that. If if they could continue on the line of this Montana Mountain King. That's an interesting thing.
We'll make. I'll make some phone calls. I know some people in the industry, and I'll make some phone calls and see what I can find out about this.
Yeah,
because I know a couple people in the not the obviously the wild swinger sheep breeding
those guys. So some sheep swingers.
I don't know those, but I do know some people that like. I don't want to mention them. This is it'll get awkward if they hear this podcast, and they will. Let me make some calls. I'll see what I can figure out about this.
Yeah, but
we'll do another podcast. Hopefully, when they report on this, because my understanding is that they, from just a little bit we talked, is that they've prosecuted this guy. Is there any update on the charges and what exactly they're charging him with?
Yeah, he pled guilty to it as let's see here. It was conspiracy to violate the Lacey Act plus.
Lacey Act is Lacey. Now the Lacey Act violation we talked about this earlier. The Lacey Act is obviously game violations across state lines. Now, does Lacey Act, obviously, if you're going across the country, it is across state lines.
Yeah,
but
because
across borders from other countries, is that still a Lacey Act violation?
I think
that's something I've read the Lacey Act myself, and I don't actually know that.
There's also a secondary charge because he was also convicted of buying bighorn sheep parts that were hunted. Because that's a secondary charge.
That's not legal?
Well, you can't buy parts from hunted animals. Like you can't. Buy, like you can't buy deer meat, and you can't.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to if you buy a hide, it has to be processed and all that, and there has to be there's like certain laws, but he didn't follow those procedures. Like you can buy taxidermy, but there has you can't.
But
there's things you have to do to buy the taxidermy.
Yeah, I don't think that just cutting off sheep testicles is a taxidermy process.
No.
Maybe that's how he got him through customs. He told him he was going to taxidermize this sheep wing.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder. No, that's a super interesting thing to bring up. Maybe he did be like, hey, I'm doing taxidermy on this, and that's how he smuggled it back. Yeah. I bet you that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I know there's certain ways you have to declare it with the U.S. Customs and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get that in.
Okay, but he's not obviously this guy's breaking some law. This guy's taking some chances with the laws here.
Yeah,
so.
It's like, I'm just going to make a ball bag.
I'll
make a purse.
Okay, to be fair, in our family has been done.
Yes, it has.
I believe my brother did mount deer balls one time.
Yes, he did.
He tournament. Do you remember my brother John Mark?
Yeah.
Who was about to be...
Didn't he?
I can't say. He's about to be. No. All right. Go on.
We're not gonna say.
I'm getting the. Don't say that.
Did he give him to our other cousin Timothy?
Oh yes, it was a Christmas present.
Yeah.
He mounted the deer balls as a Christmas present.
Yeah.
My craziest brother. All right. I'm getting the do not say this sign. Oh man. You know what? We're not very popular yet, so maybe I'll just say it. Yeah. My brother, who's about in Bible college, about to be a missionary, spent 8 years in the Marines. My craziest brother took a big change for the. Towards God, preached at our church last week. He mounted deer balls for a Christmas present when he was younger. That's interesting. No, that's. He's gonna. We might have to delete. I don't like deleting things.
Nah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
We might have to delete it down the road.
You know what? He should own what he did.
Yeah. Listen, that's not the craziest thing he did, which is wild.
Hey, I mean. Paul used to kill Christians.
Oh yeah, good point. Paul, that's a good point. Paul did kill Christians,
and that's not worse than.
That's not worse. No, that's not worse than mounting deer balls.
Yeah,
we should. I mean, all we got to do right here is just get a. I'll ask him. I'll see what he says. I'm sure he's going to say no now, but I'll ask him what the process is like. Oh, this is why we talk about this all the time. We're like, man, we should never have a podcast.
And then we're like, yeah, we should.
and then we're like, all right, well, we'll say it.
Yeah, but anyway, so right now, I don't think sentencing's happened, but this guy right now, he's facing 2 felony charges, maximum for 5 years in prison for each charge, and $250,000 fines for each charge.
Oh, wow. So $500,000 in fines and 10 years in jail is maximum. I mean, he's probably going to plead out. He might. Yeah, I bet you he doesn't get jail time. I bet you he doesn't.
I probably would. I'm not surprised if he doesn't.
Unless
he's like 80 years old, too.
Oh, yeah.
10 years in jail. 10 years in jail is a life sentence.
Hold on, dude. You just dropped that on me out of nowhere. This is an 80-year-old dude that went and was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go crank out a sheep, bring it back, and make a new version. Dude, man.
Yeah.
This guy is so
He's
cool.
ballsy.
Oh my God. Oh, you can't do that to me, man. That's wow, dude. The hunting community is it's full of stories. We'll have the Hunting News podcast. We'll have a podcast forever. This is like if you got this creative, there's never going to run out of content to talk about.
I know it's like I can't really condone what this guy does, you know.
Oh, I
but
can.
then but then again,
I love it.
But then again, if you think about it, people have been doing this forever. If you think about, you know, this is bucket biology that people have been doing forever. They've been creating new breeds of stuff, new breeds of animals.
Yeah, the Shih Tzu.
Even back before that, the dachshund was created to hunt badgers in Europe. They needed a long, skinny animal to go down in a hole and beat up a badger. So they bred dogs that was long and skinny that could fit in a hole and go fight badgers. So the Germans created the dachshund. So the wiener dog, was...
Oh, dachshund's a wiener dog. Thanks.
Yeah, you didn't know that? No.
Even if you get away from animals, like the founder of modern day genetics was Gregor Mendel, and he was doing
the pea guy.
experiments with pea plants. So I mean, people have literally been doing this for hundreds of years.
Yeah, that's when we just discovered it. People's like, hey, that dog has short ears. I want short ears. I'm going to breed him with that other dog with short ears. And guess what? I'm going to take the babies that have short ears and breed them with the other dog with short ears. And, and sooner or later, all their babies have short ears. That's what they've been doing. That's a selective breeding. This is just a more advanced version of that. And right now, it's just kind of regulated by the government.
So why have... okay, so this is all... Oh, man, there's so many directions we can go with this. Obviously, is that all that we have from the actual...
That's pretty much the story.
I want to kind of segue into something else a little bit different than what we were going to talk about, but like even with deer... I've been on the phone and talking and interviewing a bunch of high fence deer farmers, and I know people that are watching this, you're gonna see, oh, high fence deer farmers. I'm against high fence deer farming, and listen, I have a slightly different perspective after talking to them. But what they were telling me is they breed deer they find deer with really big antlers, and they breed them with other does that have produced bucks with big antlers, and they produce deer with bigger and bigger antlers over time. And I mean, when you think about it, like there was wolves. And now we have Chihuahuas. Like, how did we do that? Like, we can make major changes through breeding over time. And when you're talking about, something like a deer that breeds once a year, it takes, once a year, and then another year. With humans, obviously, you're breeding every 20 years, so it takes longer. I mean,
you breed every 20 years?
I don't breed every...
Poor Katie.
Oh, dude, I hope my wife does not listen. Listen, we bred twice in 5 years, okay? Lots of practice in between. She's going to kill me if she sees this. Nobody tag my wife. Yeah. I know it's going to happen.
Oh, we'll be clipping this, folks.
Dude, this is why I shouldn't be on a podcast. But anyways, so back to deer, and let's get back to something normal like deer and sheep swinger clubs. The big bucks, the guy I talked to, he actually breeds typical bucks and only typicals. He stays away from the non-typicals where you get them like 600 inches, and like you take deer where the biggest buck ever killed non-typical is like 300 and something inches, and you can double that through selective breeding over time. Because one interesting thing that I learned from talking to him, which I felt so stupid when he said it to me, he's like, now, obviously people talk about the steroid issue, and I was like, yeah, so what kind of steroids do you give them? He's like, you can't give deer steroids to grow bigger antlers. And I'm like, well, really? He's like, well, think about it. When their hormones go up, what happens? I'm like, well, their horns get hard. He's like, so if I gave them hormones, what would happen? Their horns would go hard, they'd stop growing. He's like, exactly. That's stupid. It doesn't work that way. So I've talked to him, and for anybody listening to this, we are going to bring a actual high fence deer, a deer breeder who has a high fence deer farm, who has some really, really interesting things to say. Actually, some good things for the wild game industry. I haven't talked to you a lot about this yet.
Okay.
So anybody watch this, stay tuned. We're going to have him on here and talk to us about high fence deer hunting. We're going to have him talk to us about deer breeding and how that's going to help the wild population and some of the diseases that we're dealing with, which blew me away. I've talked to people with, PhDs. I've got all the research. it changed my perspective on that stuff a little bit. So we're going to talk about that stuff moving on. But
all right. So
anyways,
let's get into
the next one is I was working in a factory before, and I was, when we were running the hunting news, we had a very interesting job where we were making decent money. It wasn't enough to provide for a family fully, but we got to pay for all our hunting stuff. You can hide all your money from your wife. You're like, oh yeah, it's business related, right? Yeah. My wife's cool. She let me spend it anyway. She didn't really care, but she and I'm saying that because if Corey clips this clip, I want her to know, like, hey, I love you. You're the best. But she goes. Anyways, we're making a decent amount of money with this, and so we did a lot of research. We're reading every single hunting, fishing, outdoor bill that was ever passed by Congress. I was going through from Teddy Roosevelt forward, every book I could get my hands on. I was reading and learning about the hunting industry, learning about the history of public lands, learning about all that. Yeah. So I read a bunch of books, a bunch of laws passed by Congress, and one of the books, when I was working in a factory, I'd get an audiobook, put on my headphones. And I was like, oh, well, I love deer hunting, so let me learn about animal mating, because obviously you hunt them typically during mating season. So I got a book. I found it online. It was called Wild Sex, Mating in the Animal Kingdom, which I thought was going to be like, I don't know, like the deer rut. It turns out it was not. It was like from everything from like, bugs that have like horns and stuff. And it's a really interesting book to a lot of just really interesting things. Like spiders would give gifts to other like females, like a male spider would wrap up a gift and hand it to a female spider. And then the spider would go to open it and he would mate her while she was trying to open it. And then she'd open it and there was like a certain percentage of spiders just wouldn't have anything. And then he'd be like, surprise, you're pregnant. So like that's a real thing.
Gift rape.
Sounds like human relationships that I've heard about.
Dude, listen. Yes, a little bit.
Turns out there was nothing there the whole time.
Turns out he was a loser. Yeah, it's like most girls and guys and humans. But anyways, there's this one part comes up, and I'm listening to it. I'm in a factory. There's guys all around me, and they see me busting up laughing. They're like, what is it? I'm like, dude, I can't say it. Basically, what happens is I looked at all these guys. There's like 20 guys around me, and all these
like usual.
Yeah, I said, dude, I'm just listening to a audiobook about fish bukkakis. And anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a is that a scientific term, or is that like a pornographic term?
Or both.
Or
I don't
both.
know.
I don't know. I don't know. What
I don't know. And I don't want to look that up on my phone to find out.
Just like I'll Google it later.
I was like, hey, Corey, you want to look that up for us?
Nah, we'll let that stay on Steven's algorithm.
So basically what happens is there's a certain type of fish. It's called a mouth-brooding cichlid. And these are fish all over the place. There's lots of different mouth-brooding cichlids. And what they do is the female fish lay their eggs, and then they put the eggs in their mouth, and then they just line up a bunch of male fish, and then they ejaculate all over the female fish, like right in like all over the face of the female fish, while the eggs are sitting in the mouth to inseminate the eggs. And I'm sitting there in this factory just laughing as hard as I can. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's a fish bukkake. And they're like, you're listening to this? I'm like, well, yeah, but it's for research, for real. Like, yeah, it really is.
Yes, there wasn't a video.
It wasn't a video. It was just an audiobook. And so basically what I learned was a bunch of really cool things about animal breeding that replicates human breeding in a lot of ways.
So how does that?
This is not.
So it's like that. Okay. So it's like that one picture with the. You know what I'm talking about.
I have no clue what you're talking about. Go on.
All those guys around that one girl on the couch.
Oh yeah. They're what guys?
You know what I'm talking about.
What girl? What do they look? Explain the picture to the people. This is a podcast. Explain it so that people know what you're talking about.
The blonde girl with all the guys in the white t-shirts.
The urban fellas around.
The basketball players.
Wow. Mark, timestamp that for sure. This is episode 2
or 3.
Well, yeah. Okay. Anyways, so what I learned was like how different animal species breed, and I was very interested in it because of hunting and reporting. Mm-hmm. And I never ended up writing that article for our page. We had the page Fish Junkies. We still do on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Fish Junkies is still there. I was going to write it for that, but I just I just couldn't, so I decided to talk about it on YouTube.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyways, it was a very interesting book.
Any other animals that you found interesting?
There was the spiders and the fish were the most interesting, but there's a lot of manipulation in the animal kingdom where they try to. There's two things that happen with animal breeding. One is like a lot of fighting, obviously, which sounds like humans, and a lot of manipulation, which sounds like humans, right? I'm raising my daughter's 13 years old, and she's not allowed to listen to this. After this episode, she's definitely not allowed to listen to it.
We got to decide which episodes. Skip this one, skip this one.
Yeah, right. This is on the internet forever. Like my great grandkids are gonna be like, "Wow, great grandpa was awesome or wild." Yes, but anyways, it's a lot of manipulation. It's a lot of trying to pass on your genetics. And with the fish, they never knew which male fish inseminated. So the male fish would actually protect the eggs because they're like, I don't know if that's mine. They don't have DNA tests like humans do. But anyways, there's a lot of interesting things in the animal mating kingdom, and we're going to get into this more, especially with deer, because I think that's very interesting to a lot of the people listening, because that's what I was trying to get to when I accidentally come across some very weird stuff. But it
came across.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, we're all in a handbasket and going somewhere.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna get into it with animal breeding, with specifically deer breeding. I'm gonna make some calls. I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of some people. I know some people in DNRs in different states. I might know somebody who can get some more information on this, and we will talk about the in a future episode, hopefully within the next month or two, with a high fence deer hunter, that people who are adamantly against high fence deer farming and that are against high fence deer hunting and deer farming. Those are actually two separate issues, and I want to bring multiple people on here and have some topics because my mind was actually changed. Not in all ways. Like I'm not for putting deer in a pen and hey, there's my big buck, shoot it, bang. That's obviously not cool. But this is a big industry that might. Let me put this out there. Deer breeding for these high fence deer industry might save deer hunting in America as we know it today, and that's not an over exaggeration at all. It could save. Let me say that again. Deer farming might save deer hunting in America as we know it, and that is an important topic to talk about. And everybody has their mind made up on it. And I found that after 10 years of research and 10 years of writing articles and all the things I've read, that I was wrong on a couple of things when I talked to a high fence deer farmer. And I'm going to bring him on here. Actually, we're going to travel to him. I want to get him on the podcast in person and really have a couple of podcasts. And I think a lot of people watching this will be surprised and will have their minds changed in certain aspects of this. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on Facebook if you have any questions about it, or if you have any questions. Anything you want us to talk about, comment on Facebook. We will talk about it. We'll bring up the topics. If you have a news article or whether it's just something, listen, we're obviously willing to talk about anything after this podcast.
If you guys want a screenshot of Steven's search history on Google,
listen, it weirds me out now. But yes, comment on all of our stuff. We want to hear from you. Not necessarily I don't subscribe. Yeah, I'm a millennial. I'll say it. But comment, talk to us.
I'm Generation X.
Yeah, you're old. But anyways, as a millennial, I'll say it. But comment, give us what you think. Give us who you think is the ass of the week. There you go. And then we'll talk about this on the next couple of podcasts. If you bring up a cool topic, we'll respond. We'll talk about it. So obviously on Facebook, The Hunting News, also The Sportsman Party, Rack Junkies. You can follow us at any of those places, and the Hunting News on YouTube, which will shortly be changed to the Hunting News Podcast here shortly. Follow us. Let us know what you think about this episode, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot.